This episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast is brought to you by Bluehost. Try the #1 recommended web hosting provider. With plans starting at just $3.95 a month, you'll get a free domain, free site builder, easy one-click WordPress installs, and 24/7 support. But what's just as impressive as what you get is what you don't get, as there's no contracts, no hidden fees, and no gimmicks. Go check them out at lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/Bluehost. You're listening to the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast, the weekly show sharing proven methods and systems in marketing, equipment, and customer service, educational and motivational, to help make your lawn care business an overwhelming success. Now here's your host, Julio Tomei. Welcome, Lawn Care Nation, to another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Julio Tomei, and this is episode number 104, entitled Communicating with Your Clients. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining me this week on another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. Really appreciate you guys, as always, tuning in each and every week and listening to those episodes and downloading them. Also appreciate the reviews that have been coming in as of late. Like I say, it's probably the single most important thing that you guys can do for the show if you do find value in the episodes. So like I say, I really do appreciate when you guys take the time out to leave those reviews. It really is, I know, a bit of a pain, the way Apple has it sort of laid out, but I thought I would read a couple of the latest episodes that have come in over the past few months. So Jeff's Lawn says, I really enjoy listening while I work. It's nice to hear a podcast from someone who knows what it's like to own and operate a solo lawn care business. So thank you for Jeff for leaving that review on iTunes, and also for Dustin Kent, who left this review. This is a great podcast. I listen to it during my long drive to work and back home, trying to gather as much information and as many tips as I can to better prepare myself for the start of my very own lawn and landscaping business. I really enjoy the interviews. There's a lot of really good information to be had here. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much to Dustin for that. And also from Kevin at Lawnmen. He says, I have listened to all the past shows and the content is better than great. It is awesome. So much you can learn from each episode. Please don't stop making the episodes, because you are helping to inspire me and so many other people to go out and work hard, to get out of their comfort zone. All I know is they don't have enough stars on here. 5 is not enough. More like 100 stars. Keep it up. You're doing great. Awesome. So thank you very much, Kevin, for that review. And I also noticed another one just came in from somebody named Geo19819, and it says, excellent podcast. This is a great podcast. I'm hooked. Highest recommendations. I reference topics from the show all the time at work. So thank you very much for that one. That one actually just popped up right now. I just saw that one for the very first time. So thank you very much for you guys leaving those podcast reviews on iTunes. Like I say, I know that it's a bit of a pain with iTunes to leave a review. It's kind of a roundabout way to have to leave the reviews, but iTunes is sort of the central hub of all podcasts. There are other, obviously, like Google Play now hosts their own podcasts and stuff like that. But for most of the web, the podcasts are drawn off of iTunes. So those reviews on iTunes are of the utmost importance for getting the show noticed. This week's topic here is something that keeps coming up in my business, that I keep noticing when I'm quoting other people. A new client will call and I'll go and see them, and one of the common threads that I get and that I notice is that they'll say that they're thankful that I called them back or thankful that I answered the phone, and that they're having a really hard time phoning companies and getting people. And obviously right now it's the springtime, and most of us can attest to it being super, super busy. But with that being said, there's a lot of work on the table that I see as almost being too easy for me to pick up at times. It's like, what's that saying? Taking candy from a baby. Because the competition and these other companies around me just aren't answering the phone. Or not responding in a timely fashion. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect and that, I've always been the best at this. There's been plenty of times where, I've gotten a call or a request for a quote on lawn service or a hedge or something like that. And, I'll notice the call come in or notice an email come in. And I'll be like, okay, well, I'm in the middle of something right now, so let me just finish this, and then I'll call them back. But what happens is that you tend to forget. And then you will remember maybe later on in the day and be into something else. And be like, oh, shoot, I forgot to call that person back. But again, I'm in the middle of something. So, I'll just wait till the end of the day. And then the end of the day happens, and you seemingly forget again. And you may not remember until you're in maybe a situation in the evening, or you're out with friends, or something's going on, and now you don't want to call because you're in this other situation. So you'll be like, okay, I'll just call back first thing in the morning. That's acceptable. I'll return the call the next day. But then you'll forget again. And like I said, this has happened to me, and I completely understand, because you get into a pattern, you're busy, things happen. And when I eventually do call them back, they'll say, oh, thanks for, getting back to us, but we already hired somebody, or we already found somebody. And it was a missed opportunity. And like I said, I noticed this as an ongoing pattern with other businesses as well. And like I say, I'm not perfect. I'm not, not going to say it's never happened to me. I have done it, like I just explained. But more often than not, it's me on the receiving end of calling that company back or calling that person back, and having the good fortune of me being the only one that's called them back. And it makes it, like I say, almost too easy in getting that work, because their options now are limited, where they're, lawn care is a fairly easy to get to, or easy to get into business. You see all of the, guys, I'm sure all day long when you're out and about, and you see tons of trucks and trailers and tons of just trucks. And, it can range from kids doing lawn care to full-blown landscaping companies. So there's a wide range of competition there. So if somebody is calling you to quote on their property, obviously there's something that they may have seen your trucks around, they may have seen or heard a recommendation from somebody, or maybe they are just stumbled upon you online, and your online presence is what is getting them to call you. So it's imperative that you start off on a good foot. If you're trying to build a brand for yourself, you're trying to build that name for yourself, then that communication is imperative. Even if you are completely swamped and you are, completely full and you cannot take any more work, you still should be communicating that with the client, either by posting on your website that, you're completely booked for the time being, or for the season, or whatever the case, may be, or through your voicemail message when somebody's calling, And if you're not answering the phone, to just have a message on there saying that, thank you for calling. At this time, we are, completely booked, or, there's no space available on our schedule, or whatever the case may be. And if you'd still like to leave a message, please do so after the beep with your details. But communicating that message to the client, the worst thing you can do is not communicating anything with your client and just leaving them hanging, because you may be busy now, but things can change. And I'm, a testament to that. For, a lot of you guys know, if you followed my podcast, you follow my story, how drastically my business has changed just this past year. And I've talked about how I lost a whole whack of clients all at once this past year over the course of 2 months during the summer, when real estate in the city that I live in, the prices of real estate reached a fever pitch. And foreign investors coming in, a whole bunch of different aspects, and supply and demand, and just the amount of people moving in to the city. In fact, in the suburb that I live in currently, a suburb of Vancouver, there are 1,000 new residents that move into this suburb every month. That is insane. And I've talked about how when, an older home from, say, the 80s or the 70s, and even the early 90s, a home that's built at those sort of times, when the supply and demand wasn't as great, properties were built on homes were built on larger properties. And I'm not talking acres or half acres or even quarter acres. I'm talking like maybe 8,000 square feet or 9,000 square feet or 7,000 square feet, sort of an average property size. And, now when those homes are being sold, not to mention the homes that are on quarter acre or half acre or acre, those are immediately being torn down. And new whole subdivisions built, because the property is so much more valuable, divided up into multiple houses. I've talked about how the average home price in the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, is in the $2 million range. Think about that. The average home, if you want a single family home on a very modest sized property, I think the average lot size in Vancouver is probably 33 feet wide by about 100 feet deep. And that's going for $2 million with a house on it. And some of these houses range in their condition. There's been, news stories showing, or poking fun at the situation, and, internet memes poking fun of showing some backyard old wood rotten garden shed, with a meme sort of poking fun at the prices of homes in Vancouver, saying, the average for sale in Vancouver, average home $2 million, and showing like this rotted old garden shed, because the stuff that was selling was insane. It was just, the value of the property was so much because of the supply and demand, and a whole whack of foreign investors coming in because of the climate here on the west coast of Canada. Like say, we did get hit with a big snowstorm this year, but on the average, that's not the average. We have usually very mild winters. We're by the water. We have the mountains. You can go skiing very easily. Then you have, beaches and swimming and orca whales and dolphins and eagles, and just the outdoor opportunities here. If you're an outdoor enthusiast, mountain biking trails, all the lakes, and it's just, it's like a paradise to an outdoor enthusiast. So a lot of opportunity for those types of things, and a healthy sort of, lifestyle living in this area. So, just like I say, with the mild weather, the stable sort of banking that we have in Canada, and then you have, just enticing, and, like I said, the property prices were going crazy. So because of this fever pitch that hit, my customers were seeing, and myself included, everybody was seeing how nuts, what people were buying houses for. It didn't matter what you would put for your house for sale for. It would sell for, some cases, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 over the asking price, in some extreme cases. And it was just mind blowing. It was not uncommon to see, a house sell for over $100,000 over the asking price. Just because there would be multiple people on the showings. Sometimes I've got some real estate agent friends, and they would say, they'd have like 20 or 30 parties or families coming through a house to see on the first showing day, and then have multiple offers at the end of that day. And this would just drive up the prices. So because of this, a lot of the older clients that I would have would see this and see that, they're really sitting on a big golden egg, basically. And that in their situation, if they were considering retiring and moving out of the province, moving away to a different area, that they could really cash in. Not so much if you were going to sell the place that you're living at and still stay where you are, in the city, and just finding a different place. You really didn't benefit that much, because you'd be paying, these high prices even after you sold. But if you're moving away to a different part of this country or a different part of the province, there were many areas that were drastically cheaper, and you could, cash in on a $2 million sale of your home here, and then move to another part of Canada and buy, a house that's equal to what you had here for, $100,000, $200,000, and have all the rest of that money in the bank. You'd have to deal with more extreme weather, more winter weather. But, there were other opportunities as well, too, if you wanted to move abroad and other areas as well. But you guys get the picture. So I had a whole bunch of clients selling those properties all at once, until the government imposed a tax, a foreign buyer's tax, which drastically slowed down. It didn't reduce the prices of the houses. It just reduced sort of the fever pitch, the craziness of it, for the time being. So I found myself in a situation where a whole bunch of these clients were selling their houses because they were either retiring or had considered, moving away, or downsizing or that sort of thing. And that was the perfect opportunity to do it, to sort of cash in at that point. So, like I say, I found myself at the end of last summer with, a drastic reduction in the amount of weekly clients I had. And all of them were fantastic customers. They were all sad to see, or, to be moving to an area where I wouldn't be able to service, because I only service the specific area I live in. And a lot of the cases, they were moving, much farther areas, but all of them were really good customers, and I had great relationships with them. I even had one customer who was moving about 6 hours away, and there was a bunch of things that the moving company wouldn't take for them, and she wanted to pay me essentially to use my truck and trailer for me to deliver. They were like some spiral hedges in pots and things that the moving company wouldn't take, and she wanted me to take them for her and drive the 6 hours to her new place, and then essentially come back home, and was asking me, how much that would be and stuff. And unfortunately, at the time of year, it just wouldn't work because I wouldn't be able to give up that amount of time. It'd probably be, at least a full day or 2 days to do it safely, without getting, crazy tired and, into a situation where, it gets dangerous driving for that long. So I decided not to do it, but it sort of shows you the relationship there, that they were still to the very end, wanting me to continue doing things for them because they trusted me. They, appreciated the work that I had done for them previously. So there's times, and with that being unexpected, like I said, I found myself at the end of that summer, with a big, sort of loss in revenue. And this is coming up to, the fall, where I'm getting ready for the winter, and the, expected slowdown in the season, and the, lack of income for the next few months. So when you're dealing with those clients that are calling in, this sort of long explanation kind of comes back to the roundabout point that you need to always communicate with those clients, even if you are too busy at the time to take on that work, but to communicate with them, to keep those lines open. If you just leave them hanging and you don't communicate anything with those clients, the likelihood of them calling you back again is next to none. If they need something in the future, they probably will not call you back again, because their very first impression, or maybe their second impression, maybe their first impression of your company is good, with seeing maybe your truck and trailer. Maybe you have a really nice truck and trailer. It looks very professional, looks very fancy. Maybe that's, what they're looking for. They see you working with your uniforms, and maybe they see the work you're doing, and that's their first impression is good. But then they go and call you and you never call back. That will immediately diminish what they initially thought about you, and they probably will not call you back again. So you don't want to do that. You always want to, even if you cannot call the person back, or you can't answer the phone back right away, to at least return their call and talk to them and let them know that, you don't have space. Or in some cases, I get a lot of times is customers calling and asking me to quote or work in a certain area that I don't work in. It's just too far out of my region. And the easy thing to do would be just to ignore those calls. But again, the best thing to do is to call them back and just let them know that it's just too far out of your area, and that you appreciate, and maybe have some colleagues, or maybe know some numbers that they can call, because that usually is the next question. Well, do you know somebody I can call? So maybe have some other companies that maybe some colleagues that and trust, that you can pass on a phone number for. And it's a good way to, with your colleagues, with guys at work, that you may see from time to time at your dealer or at the garden centers or things like that, that you can talk to and say, hey, get to know them and say, I work in this area. Where do you work out of? And blah, blah, blah. And just be friendly. Like I say, always talk to your competition. Don't be afraid to approach them. Case in point, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that this past week, I was doing a quote and I noticed a company across the street mowing a church, and the guy was using a Skag V-Ride. And I decided, hey, I've never seen a Skag V-Ride before in person. Let me just go and ask the guy where he got it, because I've never seen any of these stand-on mowers for sale, except for this past February, a dealer for their demo day brought in one of the Toro grandstands. And it's like my first exposure to a stand-on mower here on the west coast of Canada. So when I saw the Skag V-Ride, I was like, I'm going to have to go and talk to this guy. So I went across, and the guy immediately turned off the mower. He saw me coming across the street. And, I asked him about it. He told me where he got it and stuff. And then he was like, hey, you want to take it for a spin? And, the next thing you know, I'm trying out this Skag V-Ride for the first time using a stand-on mower. And then I sat there and chatted with him for maybe a good 15 or 20 minutes or so. Like I say, never be afraid to talk to your competition. There's plenty of work out there for everybody. So try to work together. Like I say, in this case, there's, opportunities there where you can refer other guys to clients that are calling you that may be out of your area, or doing things that you don't do. I've told a story before where I was driving one day and I saw this other company and they were trimming a hedge. And this hedge was perfect. It was just absolutely, it looked like it was trimmed with like laser levels, and just the amount of perfection in this hedge trimming was phenomenal. And I had to pull over and talk to these guys. So I pull over and the guy kind of reluctantly looks at me and turns off his machine, and he comes up to me and I say, hey, I just got to say that hedge looks awesome. And he was totally taken by surprise. And I was like, well, that's fantastic. How do you do it so good? I said, I could not do a hedge that nice. That just looks fantastic. And he was instantly, his initial sort of body language of like, what's this guy want? Totally eased, and was then, chumming around and, very open to talking to me once I praised how much I liked his work. And the funny thing is a week or so later, I got a call from a client asking me for a quote on lawn maintenance. And the person said, such and such person at this hedge company referred you. And obviously his company, I can't remember the exact name, but it was Hedge something. He only did hedges. That was his thing. So obviously he didn't do lawn maintenance, and somebody obviously asked him to do lawn maintenance, and he referred me to do the lawn maintenance for this company. So working together with your competition can help with your communication with these clients, because they will inevitably ask you for a referral or a thing if you can't do it yourself. So it's good. It's a good way to do that and to help others out, especially when you're swamped with work anyways and you can't take on that work, or if it's out of your area anyways. But you have to remember, a client who's out of your area, people move around and they may come into your area at some point in the future, and they'll remember that service, and it just paves the way of good customer service, and they will likely call you again and give you the next crack at whatever they need. So just always communicating. So one of the best ways I've found for picking up work is when the phone rings is to phone back as soon as possible. Don't put it off. If you can, phone them back right away, and you increase your likelihood of picking up that client the quicker you call back. The second tip would be to send emails and communicate with your clients on why you are a no-show that day. If there's something that comes up, it's too wet, it's too rainy, if you can't mow in the rain, if another job is holding you back, if a doctor's appointment or a family emergency comes up, shoot them an email. I have the email addresses of every single one of my clients. There was only one client that I had, a very, very elderly lady, who did not have an email address. I found that everyone else, regardless of their age, had an email address. Now, I still know there's obviously still older generation people that are not going to be up with the technology and stuff. But in this case, the person had, most of them have email addresses or access to email addresses, or a family member, a son, a daughter that has an email address that you can send inquiries to or communication to that they can then relay to that person. So always communicate why, you're not showing up, why, something that may come up. Also, another great thing is to communicate any problems that you see or encounter. So if, say, dog poop is a problem for you, and this is a problem for me, I don't like mowing if there's dog poop. I tell customers all the time when I'm first meeting them or first quoting them that, all the dog waste has to be picked up prior to me showing up. And again, I, have a new client that I picked up this past week. And as part of why this topic and this episode has come to play is because the last company that the person had, they came and they were mowing. And apparently this customer says that they had to have an area in their front yard reseeded or resodded. So they have a boulevard that has some grass on it. Then there's a sidewalk and then their front yard. And only the front yard section on one side of their driveway was being resodded. The backyard was not being touched. The other side of the driveway was not being touched, and the boulevards were not being touched. Those were all staying with the original grass that they had on them. So they mentioned when their lawn care guy came, their other company, that, the new sod went down and not to mow it for a few weeks, but to mow the rest. And somehow this, I don't know what else transpired or what the exact communication or wording was. This is, what the client is telling me now. Is that the other company then never showed up again. And he said to me, I don't understand it. I just told them to skip that one section of lawn for a couple weeks, but to mow the rest of it. And they haven't showed up. And now the grass is like 1.5 feet tall. And they won't return my calls. They won't return my emails. I've called. He said that this was another franchise. It wasn't the franchise that I worked or had a part of. But this was a new franchise that's based on the East Coast of Canada. So their head office is in the East Coast of Canada. So he says he's calling their number, and it's, he said some receptionist answering the phone in Toronto. And he's, trying to get a hold of this franchisee. And after a few days, he still hears nothing. So he phones the head office back again. And the receptionist is apologizing and saying that she can't get a hold of them. She keeps contacting the guy. And she can't even get a hold of him. He's not responding to her calls or anything. And I was thinking, well, that's odd because I've seen the guy a bunch of times. I've seen him a couple times this week mowing and stuff. He's the only, one that's in this area. So I know that's the guy. And I've seen him. So he's not ill. Or, hasn't been in an accident or something like that, he's not able to respond. He's just poor communication skills, poor customer service skills. And for some reason, something set him off. And he just doesn't want to call back or go back to this house. So I ended up mowing this particular lawn and picking up this customer as a weekly client now. And the person was so thankful that I actually, did the lawn and handled the 1.5 foot tall grass that they gave me, in addition to obviously paying me a higher rate for the first mowing. They actually told me to hang on when I was done, and they came out with a big bottle of white wine from New Zealand and said, for me to enjoy with my significant other, and to thank me very much for, taking on the lawn, because they were just so frustrated that their current provider just wouldn't respond to their calls and wouldn't show up anymore. So that's what spurred on this episode. And it was just had me thinking about, past instances where this is something that has happened more than once, and thinking about, how even for me, like I say, I'm not perfect, and I've had instances where it gets busy, and it's not because I'm going out of my way and not responding. Usually it's because you just get so busy and you forget. I don't let it happen often, but when it does, I'm always kicking myself going, oh man, I can't believe I forgot to call that person back. So it's something that we all need to work on, is getting that communication with clients. So if you're, listening to this, thinking that you're epically failing in that sort of realm, to not worry, that we all do it from time to time. The key is just to work on it and just get better at it, and to keep that communication going in all those aspects. Communication is the key. The more you talk to your clients, and like I say, I've got clients that I rarely talk to in person. I have one I've mentioned where I've never even met them in person, and I've been mowing their lawn for 3 or 4 years now. And when their credit card expires and all that sort of stuff, I just send them an email, and we communicate through email. They'll ask me for quotes through email. I'll respond back in email. It's totally fine, because it's still communication. Yet I've never met this person face to face, wouldn't know what they look like, if I came up to them in person. So I would say to, just keep that communication open. I'm going to play the podcast announcements, and then I'm going to come back with a couple of suggestions and things and tools you can use to help you with that communication. All right, so stay tuned. Hey guys, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/contact. And while you're there, why not join my mailing list and get access to a free PDF document of a landscape maintenance contract you can feel free to copy and use in your own business. For you Instagram users out there, be sure to follow me at Lawn Care Business Success. And if you haven't checked out my videos yet, well, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the Lawn Care Business Success YouTube channel. Now, I know you guys love listening to audio while you work as much as I do, so I've partnered up with Audible to offer you guys a free 30-day trial and one free audiobook of your choice. There's no long-term commitments, and you can cancel anytime. And get this, even if you cancel during the trial period, you get to keep your free audiobook. It's a great way to try the service and see if Audible is right for you. So why not give it a try? Head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/audible. Now back to the show. Okay, so as I mentioned before the podcast announcements there, I was going to mention some of the tools and things that I've used over the years to help me stay on top of that communication. Now, a couple of these things are physical tools. Now, I'm talking about the phone. Obviously, you should have your cell phone with you. Your business number, especially if you're a single owner operator, should obviously be your cell phone number. And you should have your cell phone number and your email address and all that sort of stuff. There's so many, technology has given us so many different ways to communicate nowadays. So having, communicating by text message or email, whatever the customer feels the most comfortable with, whatever they prefer. I know that I prefer either text message or email. Those are my two favorite. They're the quickest and easiest for me. My favorite being email. I love communicating with customers through email because one, it provides me a record that I can go back to. All the emails are, kept in the archives, and I can go back to them to see what I quoted or what, I can send the photos and all that stuff. You can do that stuff with text message, but it's just easier to find and look through, with subject lines and all that sort of stuff with individual email addresses. So I prefer email. But whatever, text message, phone, whatever that person is, prefers is what I would say in that situation. But what I've found over the times too is that when I'm working specifically with equipment that's quite noisy, is that a lot of the times I can't hear the phone ring. So if I was using my, back in the day, using my Peltor work tunes that had the AM FM radio, I'd be listening to that, and I couldn't hear the phone ring. Even if I had regular headphones that just had no radio built in, I wouldn't be able to hear the phone ring, because having your earplugs on and then having noisy machines like trimmers and mowers and stuff going is very difficult. So I would rely on the vibration of the phone. But in lots of cases, you're moving around, you're hustling. I wouldn't even feel the vibration on my phones. So a lot of times this just wouldn't work for me. So I started using Bluetooth headphones. So I started with the Ion Tough Sounds over the ear. These look like the Peltor work turns, the big over the ear earmuffs, but they have the Bluetooth. They have AM, FM radio and stuff, but they have Bluetooth capabilities built in. So regardless of whether you're listening to the radio or listening to your own streaming music or podcasts or whatever it is that you listen to, you will hear the audio alerts for your phone. So if a text message comes in, you'll hear that chime. If the phone starts ringing, you'll hear that, the phone, whatever you're listening to will be interrupted by the phone. But what I've found, to sort of take it a step further and just to go back a bit, if the over-the-ear style is not your thing, as many of you guys know, I've been using the Ion, not the Ion, the ISO Tunes, Pro Sounds, or Pro Tunes, I should say. These are the in-ear earbud style Bluetooth headphones. These don't have a radio, but for me that's not a big deal because I don't really listen to the radio anymore. Ever since having that Bluetooth capability, I've always listened to podcasts or audiobooks. So having these work the same, except they are in-ear earbuds that sort of loop over the top of your ear to stay in place. Very, very awesome. These are my new favorite go-to earplugs, or ear protection, I should say, the ISO Tunes Pros. They are fantastic. So if using something like this or the other Ion Tough Sounds that go over your ears, I found that because I'm an iPhone user, the iPhone, as many of you guys may know, has the little mute switch on the side of the phone that turns off all audio notifications. And I have that turned on all the time. Mostly because my dog, my pet beagle, is very sensitive to sounds. He does not like any sort of phone alerts. He starts getting major anxiety. We're not sure why, and we've had him for 9 years or so now, and he just does not like any of the audio indicators that you have a text message or anything like that. He just starts to shake and pant heavily, and just has and he starts to, he'll come seek you out and want to climb on top of you, and just has a major panic attack when he hears any sort of audio noises. If he's lying down and he's relaxed and somebody gets a text message and he hears it, he's instantly up and panting and visibly shaking and stuff when he hears that sort of stuff. So I always, all of our family members, we always have our phones on silent because of that. So because it's always on silent, I always forget to turn my phone back on, turn the audio back on. So the downside is that even with the Bluetooth headphones, it then relies on the vibration, because even with the Bluetooth headphones, if your phone is on silent, it will not play the chimes or chirps or things through your headphones as well. So I started finding that I was missing, initially I was, the Bluetooth headphones were helping with me not missing customer calls or alerts and things like that. But then because I would have the phone on silent, I would miss a lot of the text messages or emails and things like that. Not so much a problem with the phone calls, because the whatever audio you're listening to gets muted when an incoming call comes in. So I would know that, hey, there's a call coming in. But it's more for the text messages and stuff that I would miss. So the way I solved this, because I couldn't feel the vibrations in my pocket and the phone is constantly on silent and I forget to turn it back on, is I invested in an Apple Watch. Or I can't say I invested in it. My wife bought me one for Christmas because I thought this would solve my problems. And I would say that any smartwatch or even fitness band, like some of the Fitbits have this ability to show your text messages on the screen, but they have the ability to tap you on the wrist. So you're getting that vibration now directly on your skin, right on your wrist. So this has, even with my phone being on silent, I now no longer miss any of my text messages from customers or emails or that, because I get this physical tap on my wrist, letting me know that a notification came in, and I can feel this regardless because it's right there on my wrist, right on your wrist bone, that I can feel that right on there. So if I'm trimming, if I'm mowing, even if I don't hear that notification, I feel that tap on my wrist. And it actually works fantastic because most of the times the phone's in my pocket. So if I'm mowing, I'm pushing the mower along, I feel that tap, I just lift the one hand, flip it up, and the screen turns on, and I can see instantly what that notification was. And I can reply right there with a quick reply if needed, right on my wrist. And if a more elaborate reply is required, I can either then shut down the mower and use voice recognition to dictate a message on my wrist, or pull out my phone and type out a message if I want to, depending on the situation. So that's one of the options. Now, the other option I've done, because you can't always use or answer your phone to, during the day when you're working and stuff. So one of the things that I do is with my company's voicemail, I have the message saying, thank you for calling. I'm unable to come to the phone because I'm either away from the phone at the moment, or I'm using a noisy piece of equipment and I cannot hear the phone. So I let them know that why the phone's not being answered in my voicemail message, and for them to please leave a detailed message. So that is the start of the communication right there. The second half to this is on my website, and also on my voicemail, I direct people to the website for more information and to request a quote. And on the website, I have a page for requesting a free estimate. And with this, I use a plugin for WordPress called Jotform, Jotform. And Jotform basically lets you make custom forms. So you can basically make a form however you want. You can, have different fields. So if you want the customer's name, their address, you can have required fields that they have to think. You can have check mark boxes. So with mine, it asks the customer's name, their phone number, their address, their email address, and these are all required forms. So they can't move on until they provide that information. And then the suburb that they're from, and I have all my services listed with check boxes, and they can check off what they want a quote for, and then they hit submit. And the website then obviously takes their information and it emails me that information. So I get an email with the customer's name, their address, that they want a quote, that what they're looking for a quote for. And even before I call that client, I can look on Google Maps, look up their address. If they're looking for a hedge, if they're looking for a lawn, I already have an idea of where their house is, what size lawn there is. I can look at the neighborhood that they're in. I already have this whole idea, a whole bunch of information ready within a few minutes that I can then call them back right away. And I already have all this information and I know an idea of, roughly what day of the week and all that sort of stuff. If it's a job that I would want to take on in an area that I want to take on, that sort of thing. And it's, once they submit, they hit that submit button, it automatically sends them an email back just confirming that, thank you for sending in your request. Somebody will contact you shortly. Very simple, to the point, and completely customizable as well. You can do whatever you want with this. It's just simply fantastic. It has worked great. It is like having, pretty much a secretary or, working on the website, 24 hours a day, because anybody can leave their information and request, what services they want and their address and all that stuff, 24 hours a day. And, it's sent to me. The other nice thing with JotForm is that there's an app that you can download for Android or Apple. And it keeps all of those requests stored for you, so you can go back if you need to get that customer information and all that stuff. You don't even have to go and search in your email through, say, a bunch of emails that you may have sent and received on your business email address to try to find that one for that customer. You can just go to the JotForm app, open it up, and it's all there, just the requests for whatever it is that your form is for. So mine is, requesting a free estimate. And you can have multiple forms if you wanted to through JotForm. I only use it really for just the one. And that's it, but it works fantastically for that. So those are just some of the tools and things that I have done to try to help myself make it easier to collect customer information, to be able to communicate with customers regarding quotes and regarding service requests. But it's, some of the number one patterns that you see or I see in my business is when I ask people, and it's, responding to their phone calls right away, or being reliable. That communication there of, guys not showing up that have been hired, losing those clients because when I asked them, what was wrong with the last guy or whatever, it's one of those two things. It's either I can't get a hold of the guy anymore, he stopped showing up, he doesn't come around anymore, I tried phoning him, he doesn't respond to the calls, that sort of thing, right? Or for new clients, phoning for quotes, particularly in the spring when it's super busy, and it's I get always like, you're the only one that's responded. Nobody returns my calls. I can't believe that, there's, I've called 5 or 6 landscaping companies and not one has called me back except for you. So it makes it, like I say, very easy to pick up work when you're the only one phoning. A lot of homeowners and stuff will try to get multiple estimates, and that's very difficult if other companies aren't calling back. So if you're the only one that shows up, you become the the one that they go with, because there's just no other options. So hopefully you guys found a lot of value in that episode this week. A lot of information there. Something to keep mindful about, keeping that communication with your customers ongoing all the time. So I think that's it for this week. If you guys would like to leave a review on iTunes, I would really appreciate that. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/reviews. I appreciate each and every one of you guys that does that. So that would be fantastic. And so that's it for this week. Here's to wishing you guys all overwhelming success and freedom in your lawn care business. Bye for now.